good. All right. There we go. We're going to turn a little bit this way. All right, we are live. Welcome. Okay, so tonight's topic is how to be happy even when you're being criticized. And this can be so tough, especially if you've been through previous trauma, childhood abuse, like I have with complex PTSD that I've been dealing with, and dealing with when you're being criticized, that can bring up a lot of fear. And so we're going to dive deep into that of understanding what happens and then how to deal with that so that it's constructive. And tonight I'll also be talking a lot of how to dealing with it in the workplace, right? Because a lot of times, I don't know about you, but when I would get called in to be like, hey, Tina, we have to talk, or, I need to talk with you, or we need to have a call or something like that, I like, even though I did nothing wrong, I would turn myself inside out thinking, oh no, what have I done? And I'd go through this whole list of all these things, that were terrible. And usually, I wasn't perfect, but usually what would happen is my boss would be like, no, I wanted to talk to you because I'm frustrated about this other situation and I wanted your opinion. Oh, okay. Right? But immediately I went on that defensive mode of like, oh no, I'm in trouble, right? Like being called to the principal's office. Not that I ever in my entire life was called to the principal's office for anything, but I always had that fear. And that was a lot of the times because of the environment I grew up in, and the criticism and the gaslighting and the manipulation and turning everything around to be my fault. So I learned this automatic fear that would come up when it was less than perfect. And for me, I was criticized a lot with my report cards. And I saw different behaviors from my brother. My brother would go from a D to a C, and they'd buy him a bike and take him out for dinner and celebrate what a great job that he did. And I had all high B's, A's, mostly A's that I had in school. I had 100% math, 100% in French, and I got told, when are the rest going to be 100? And I was like, what? And so there was a very different, even though we grew up in the same house, there was very different treatment for both of us. And so these things that happened, learning where they're connected and how they still affect you in your adulthood is important. And it's also to be aware of how you deliver a message, especially if you're in a position of leadership in business, and how you deliver that message. Now, I know you can't, predict how people are going to receive the message, but you can do your best and understand that sometimes they may have a reaction to something, even if you present it in the proper way. They may feel like, they're still being attacked, and it's okay to allow them to have those emotions and offer them that reassurance that it is not a personal judgment on them. It's an actual behavior that needs to be changed, or a process that needs to be changed. So, when you grow up in an environment where there's abuse, oftentimes criticism comes in the form of a personal attack, that who you are, is not enough, rather than the action that you are taking or not taking needs to be adjusted. And so a lot of times we internalize this criticism, and when we've gone through abuse and we haven't done that inner work, and even sometimes when we have done that inner work, it still comes up. But if you've done that inner work, then you're able to identify where the challenges are, and how you can mitigate those challenges going forward, because you'll learn to recognize your own patterns and when the thoughts go spiraling out of control, then you can recognize, oh, okay, this is just fear that's coming up for me. And so now you will understand how to address those things. And so, for those of you that are just joining, I see some new faces on TikTok. Welcome, guys. Welcome. My name is Tina. I am a happiness coach. I help business owners be able to deal with feelings of depression, anxiety, frustrations that they're dealing with in the workplace. And I not only have a trauma informed approach, but it's a change management um, informed approach. And I use a lot of the same tactics that I used in my corporate life of understanding the processes of being able to make the changes. And change management is the people side of change and helping them deal with the emotions of adapting to changes, adapting to new systems, cultures, whatever it is that you want them to adapt to, and having the correct approach with it and helping them get through that. Because if people do not buy into the new way of whatever changes that you're trying to implement in the business, you could end up losing some good people. You could end up not getting a return on your investment, and that costs a lot in the long run, right? So, learning how to get people to buy in to the new way of being and how to grow with them and build that up. Because um, although when you're a small business owner, you can often just say, well, you know what, it's just faster and easier to replace that person. And sure, you can go ahead and do that. But once you start getting into a bigger organization, you can't just keep, terminating people. You need to learn to work together with them, and you need to learn to build their strength, their inner work. And even if they have been through bad situations, whether that's a previous employer or um, unresolved childhood trauma or whatever it is, you inherit all of their stuff. And having them on the team, they will affect your business. They will affect the people in the business and the people that they deal with in the business. And unfortunately, you just can't get rid of everybody who hasn't had any trauma, because we've all been through stuff. And even if you haven't been through stuff, I can promise you, life will find a way to knock you down, and there will be things. And learning how to deal with those emotions and helping people through that process, and being aware of these things can help you grow your organization, help people remain loyal to the company, and help you grow that much faster, because they know that they're supported in the environment that you've created. So, giving feedback and being happy even when you're being criticized. So, number one is when you're getting that critical feedback and it hurts and it stings and you're like, oh, and you kind of go down this route of like, I'm no good, I'm terrible, I'm a horrible person, I can't do anything right, nothing's ever going to change. It just kind of, this whole downward spiral happens, and you just kind of spin out of control. Recognize that that's going on, and then stopping that. And how I stop that in my own mind is I give it a voice. I allow it to say what it has to say, and I ask myself, okay, what else? Let's hear everything that you have to say. And then I retrace it back to go, okay, where was the first time that I actually heard this kind of feedback? Um, was that fair? Would I say this to anybody else in this format? That is also a good indicator of whether or not this is true or not true. And so that would be number one, is trying to stop that downward spiral by saying, okay, this is just fear. You're just scared. It's not true. You're just scared. It's kind of like, the boogeyman under the bed or in the closet kind of thing. And it's just not real. And learning to reaffirm that and actually have an active voice to counteract the negative voice that's going on in your mind and being able to really talk back to that. That was one of the first things that I learned early in recovery, of making sure that there was a positive counter argument, so that knowing that nobody is all bad or all good, and it's a matter of balancing those negative voices out. So when you have that negative self-criticism, even if somebody else is criticizing you, make sure that you separate the principle from the personality. So even if somebody, we'll get to that in just a sec, even if somebody criticizes you and does make it a personal attack, we're going to talk about that in just 1 second. Let's go back to the understanding, is it true? So a lot of times when I would get negative feedback, number one, don't react. Don't react negatively. Don't try to argue it back. Just take it in and ask for additional feedback, ask for clarifying questions so that you are clear about what it is you did wrong, what it is you need to do right, or what the expectations were. Oh, hello. Thank you. So understanding what it is that you did wrong and get very, very clear about that kind of stuff, and make sure that you ask for the question, you ask questions, you get feedback, and without reacting, taking it personally, and trying to fight the stuff back. You can go ahead and ask your questions in the chat. Uh, so, and while you're doing that, I'll continue on with the training, and then I will be happy to answer your questions. So, sorry, it's just grabbing something. So, not reacting, and then assessing, is it actually true? If it is actually true, then making sure that you you got three cats as well. Yeah, I'm down to three. I had 12 at one time, but yeah, kind of crazy. But some were inherited, some were inherited. So, but back on the topic at hand. So understanding that, assessing whether or not that criticism is actually valid. If it is, then separating it, it's not got anything to do with your worth as a person, your value as a person, even if you did something wrong, okay? And even if you did it something deliberately, then we need to talk about how that happened, what was going on for you that made you feel like it was okay to operate in that way. So, okay, there we go. There we go. Sorry, we had to deal with that. Sorry, guys, if it's not going to be helpful comments, you will get blocked. Okay, so for sure, please, if you're going to ask questions, for sure, ask them in the chat, and I'm more than happy to help you with those. So we're talking about dealing with criticism and understanding not to take that personally. So this has nothing to do with you not being a good person. So don't react. Assess whether or not it's actually real and factual. Take the principle of the situation and not take it personally. Okay? So principles above the personality. And then know what steps that you need to take to actually correct that. Oftentimes, where we start going down that downward spiral and that self-criticism is because we're not quite sure how to actually solve the problem. So, just like children, when they're in abusive situations, they often will blame themselves because it feels like they have control over the situation then. And that is one of the ways, is by beating yourself up and thinking, oh, I did this wrong, I did that wrong. And that is a way of kind of taking back control, where you don't feel like you have control. So, beating up on yourself when you're doing that, that is a signal that you're struggling for control and you're not quite sure how to solve the problem. Katie, come here. The cats all day, they could be quiet. Come here. So, the next thing is to make sure that you understand exactly what it is that you need to fix, and get that clarity so that you know how to solve the problem. The next thing is if you are giving feedback to somebody and you are in the position where you have to provide the criticism, is not only providing the thing that was done wrong, make sure that you clearly state what it is that they need to do right, reassuring them that, they are still a valued member of the team and that you need them to correct these things and everything is going to be fine. And asking them if there's any challenges that they might have at being able to meet these particular requirements in this format based on the new feedback that was given. And when you're able to do that, then it allows for a dialogue, that it separates, that you're not making this a personal attack. You don't feel like they're a piece of shit loser worker kind of thing, that you convey that you believe that they will correct this. And this was clearly just a misunderstanding or an oversight. Even if this is something that is a reoccurring issue, conveying the belief that you know that given the right tools that they would do the right thing. And when you convey that kind of confidence and that trust in them, people will rise to that occasion and conveying that kind of belief. So if you can do that for somebody else, they're going to be able to receive the feedback, make the appropriate adjustments without beating themselves up, because that doesn't actually help you. Is having an employee or a staff or a customer or something like that in this state of fear where they believe that they've messed up and they're being hard on themselves. Because one of two things will happen. Either they'll get very aggressive with you and start blaming the company, blaming other coworkers, and being angry, argumentative, and critical of other people. This is often referred to as shit rolls downhill in the business world. So, understanding that that's not the case, right? So, now, if they are feeling somewhat sensitive about it, making sure that after you've provided the feedback that you give them some sort of connection on something not work related. So coming back afterwards to talk to them about something, like you just assume that they're going to give you the report that you're looking for. Like it's not a big deal. So when you operate in that way, you convey that kind of confidence and that kind of connection. That is something that will go a long way, that people will rise to that occasion, that they will want to do better. Um, if they are sensing, though, that you are feeling like, and I know it can be frustrating, maybe you've told this person 100 times, 10 times, 20 times, I don't know. I know there's been times where I have to watch myself and make sure that I am not correcting in a way that is belittling the person and demeaning who they are. That I am, even though I might be direct, I can be firm, I can be very to the point of saying this is exactly what needs to change. However, um, making sure that the person's self esteem is still intact, that who they are as a person is separate from the tasks that need to get done. And if the tasks get done, that's not a problem. And it's a matter of making sure that we don't withhold approval of who they are because the task wasn't done. And because that can trigger like if people have neglect wounds or abandonment wounds, that's going to bring that up of that not feeling good enough. And you don't want to trigger that spiral. Not to say that you are aware of all of these things, but being mindful that this can happen, so that if you see that maybe you're not getting the responses that you want, or maybe the behavior doesn't correct, tapping into this and kind of going, okay, I need to make more of that emotional connection, reassuring them that they are still part of the team, they are still valued, and it's just this one little thing, and making sure that you ask questions to get feedback as to whether or not they can actually do that. And now, if you're in a situation where somebody is making it a personal attack, and there's been plenty of times there that, um, and sometimes they'll smile at you while they do that, and you get confused. You're like, wait a minute, you sound like you're being friendly and helpful, but you're really being a bit of a dick here. So, and understanding how to deal with that kind of stuff. Those ones, now that can go one of two ways. If you yourself are not in a good state, maybe you're in one of the five spots that I've talked about of HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or sick. If you're one of those five, then oftentimes you're going to be much more sensitive. You're going to be much more reactive to any feedback that you've been given, and you may react negatively. Being aware of your own state, and you may take that on. So if somebody criticizes you and they're making it a personal attack rather than a constructive criticism, and they are making it like you are the bad person. If that is happening, then what is going on is, and you react negatively, is that you are going to, the reason you are reacting negatively is because you are taking that on and you believe that what they're saying is true. And so, because of that, it's going to hurt more, it's going to sting, you're going to be irritated, you're not going to react very well. So, because you're in that reactive state, that indicates that you are in a state of fear, and therefore you are in requirement of love. So there's love and there's fear. Fear is false evidence appearing real, and love is the only thing that is real. So knowing that you need love, you need care, you need support. So that is your indicator. So if somebody has made a personal attack and they say nasty things about you, and you're like, oh man, I'm terrible, I'm horrible, and you spiral down, then that is your indicator that you actually need support. And this is where you can either get outside support or you can get it internally if you've done the inner work. So this is where you combat that voice, right? And you combat it with facts, just like you would a friend. A friend, like, that if somebody said something completely out of line, not true, and you know that somebody said something to your friend just to tear them down and it wasn't based on facts, then I don't know about you, but my natural reaction to a friend, I'd be like, no, that's not true. That's complete bullshit. There's this fact, this fact, this fact, one, two, three, four, five, whatever, how many facts that you can come back. And you would argue that back with logic and go, no, here's all the proof of why that's not true. And you would help build them up in that particular way. So do the same for yourself. If somebody is negatively criticizing you and it, stings, and then you also have to look at, why is it that I believe this to be true about me? And so maybe they're criticizing you in that particular situation. It isn't true. It's not factual for that situation. But you might know internally that, yes, that does actually apply in this other situation that they have no idea about. And so that could be why it stings. That could be why it hurts more than normal. And that is also happening so as an indicator so that you can actually heal and do that inner work. Because a lot of times the things that happen to us in today are coming up so that we can heal something from the past that is actually holding us back. So these irritations, these little grains of sand come in to be abrasive so that you can actually do that work to polish things up, to clean things out, and to get rid of the parasites. Because I don't know about you guys, but that is how pearls are actually formed, is that there's a little parasite that gets into the shell of a clam, and clams don't have any defense, right? So all they can do is secrete this liquid, surrounds it, and then it hardens, right? And that's what kills the parasite. And that is how the pearl is formed, is like, so a pearl is actually a symbol of survival, that this creature um, survived, this defenseless creature survived all of these attacks and created something beautiful out of it. And so I always like the story of the clam and how a pearl is formed. So keep that in mind, that when somebody is personally attacking you, criticizing you, and it stings, that you need to look at what's going on. Why do you actually believe that to be true? Because if it's completely false, then that's easy. Like you're like, what? That's crazy talk. Like why would you even say that about me? That's not true, right? And when you know inside that that is 100% not true, that's not fair, that's not a correct, accurate assessment, then their personal attack falls on deaf ears because you know in your heart that it's not true. So this is something that's easy to combat, right? And if you're struggling with being able to combat that, that's where you tap the shoulder of an ally, right? So somebody that's on your side that you know will go to bat for you. And doing the inner work means that we are learning how to become our own ally, and that we strengthen ourselves. And this is why it's important to bring this stuff to the business world, because there's a lot of people that actually don't get this kind of healing, and then they react, and they are reacting in the business, and they are responding in ways that maybe aren't effective and harmful to the business. So this is why you want to bring this kind of thought process, this change management process, and a trauma informed one of understanding why are my reactions the way that they are, and addressing and understanding, did this trigger fear in me? If so, fear is false evidence appearing real, because if this is a problem and we understand what the solution is, then it's just a matter of taking the steps to correct the problem, because we know the exact steps that are needed in order to fix the problem. Where the fear comes in is we don't know how to fix the problem. So now this is where we spin our wheels and we don't actually move forward, and then we end up having all these maladaptive coping mechanisms that come up based on how people have reacted in the past when they are afraid. And there are many different ways that people will react depending on how long they are in a state of fear. So they might be angry and they might argue and fight and all that kind of stuff. That's the first stage. That's the first warning sign of fear creeping into the business. And then the second stage is they might be avoidant, that's the flight. They run away, they don't deal with things, they sweep things under the rugs, they deny it, they just run away from the problem. They don't tackle things head on. And guess what happens when people in your business are afraid and they don't tackle the problems head on and they're avoiding them? Those problems are going to get bigger, and you want to be able to deal with them as soon as you identify them. And then if you guys don't know how to solve that problem, then working together to solve that problem. But you can't do that if you have a culture of fear that people can't speak up about what is going on. So, and then the third stage, if that goes on for a continued length of time, the fear is not addressed, it is not removed, then that is where you get the freeze stage, where people will just do, they'll get stuck. they won't move forward on something, they don't address things, they hide things. The problem now goes underground. And now it's really difficult to identify anything that's going on. And if that continues, then you're going to get surrounded by a bunch of yes men. This is the fawn state where that's the yes men in the business, where they'll just tell you whatever they think you want to hear because they're too afraid to tell you the truth. And they're too afraid to tell you the truth, maybe because in the past you've reacted badly. Maybe you got into stage one anger, and that was your fear reaction coming up because of maybe some unprocessed trauma that you have that you haven't dealt with, and you took it as them questioning your authority rather than looking at principle above personality. It's easy to look at your team and kind of expect them to do it. It is so much harder when we receive this and realize that we are human too, and sometimes we don't handle this as effectively as we need to. So, learning how to deal with that criticism, both on the receiving end and on the giving end. So, that is so important as a business owner to be able to provide proper feedback in a way that is helpful, that is constructive, and is emotionally aware and is also trauma informed so that you understand that even if you're like, well, I've checked all the boxes and they're still reacting this way, being aware of how that can affect them if they are dealing with some of their process, their trauma, and giving them that space to be able to deal with that and not taking that personally, not taking their reaction personally. So knowing that, because if you've done the inner work, you're in a good space and they're having a hard time with it, you can't help but have compassion for them. You cannot help but have kindness for them as they struggle through this process of dealing with it. And you can give them guidance, you can give them reassurance without taking that away from them, because the struggle is part of the process for them to get stronger, for them to understand what's going on, why this fear is with them. And if they know how to deal with it, then they can move through it a lot faster. And yeah, that makes it so much better to be able to work together to have a happier work environment because everybody is operating with the same process and the same understanding on how to deal with these difficult emotions, how to take that hit when we have made mistakes and without taking it as a personal destructive thing, right? So we don't, create new trauma for somebody, right? Maybe they didn't have anything before, but maybe the way that you delivered something when you weren't your best self, maybe because you're afraid because the business numbers are not good, or you're struggling, or you're afraid of what's going to happen, and you not dealing with your own fear transfers over to your team. So this is why it's really important to do this inner work, especially as a business owner. And yeah, I hope that you guys found that helpful. And I will be uploading this on my YouTube channel. So if you haven't checked out my YouTube channel, that is Coach Tina B 125. And make sure you click on the subscribe button so that you're able to get notified when I've uploaded a new video. So hopefully this was helpful, and stay tuned. Like I said, this week I will be playing around with the time. So this is my second live that I did today. The first one I did at like 1, and that was a little bit more trauma and trauma focused, and dealing with some things around identifying problems and how to identify problems that aren't just surface level. So that was a little bit more passionate in my response. So yeah, definitely check that one out. Once I get it uploaded, I still have to upload that. So guys, I hope this was helpful. We'll have another conversation again tomorrow, and hope you come back. All right, take care. Bye.